Episode 6. What do you believe? As a child, Audrey absorbed many other things, a belief in the immortality of the soul. Her mother often said that if her daughter believed in it sincerely and zealously, she would never be alone. More often than not, these words were frightening. They made Audrey think about the inevitability of death, but in the way, there was also brought a comfort. She knew that she would never be alone, no matter what happened. Poison in plastic cups, stray bullets became the best teachers there ever were within the walls of that small church. They spelled it out. Death was just death, nothing else. But still, in giving up her faith, Audrey felt deep in her heart that her freedom came at the cost of robbing her mother of the chance of resurrection. I was afraid I would never hear her voice again. So why am I so scared now? Her mother's voice echoed insistently in her mind like a broken record. Her tear-filled eyes now seemed to flicker in every shadow. Every breeze carried the gentle touch of her mother's hands. But what they evoked was no longer a quiet peace, but a chilling horror. As much as Audrey longed to have her mother back, she would not now give anything in the world to regain her solitude. I don't need her shadow. I have to pull myself together and figure out what's happening to me. There are things in this world that I can't explain. But one thing's for sure. I'm of sound mind, and whatever happened in there wasn't a hallucination. I'm perfectly healthy. Reassuring thought brought her no comfort. Then, what did I hear? A ridiculous thought flashed through her mind, the idea of life after death. The chance that her mother was out there somewhere, that her mortal body wasn't decomposing in a coffin. That there was a place in this world where her mom was alive in a different way, perhaps, but alive. That foolish hope was cut short by the realization that made her break into a cold sweat. But what is this place? Marcus's screams, moans, and pleas for help echoed through her head. It's best not to think about it. The drive home was a blur. Right after the call, Mikkel told them to pack. Stunned, Audrey couldn't even say a word. She got the impression that everyone knew what had happened, but no one wanted to talk about it. Good thing I'm not alone right now. As Felonia made tea, Audrey found that she couldn't escape Mikkel's attentive gaze. It's like he's trying to read my mind. If you want, I can stay with you tonight. She's being very sympathetic, even though I haven't said a word to them. Is it written all over my face? Audrey shook her head and took the cup. She tried to warm her icy hands so that Mikkel wouldn't see her shiver. I'm fine, Fel. There's no need for that. You're very pale. What frightened you? There's no way in hell I'm saying it out loud. She felt that if she voiced her thoughts, they would immediately become real. They'd spill out of her mouth like dirty water, disparaging her and making her sound like she'd lost her mind. I'd rather be smothered by those thoughts than admit to something that I'm not sure about. Why did we leave so abruptly? It's definitely not because of my pallor. Undaunted by her sudden question, Mikkel replied bluntly. I found the answers to my questions. Did you find a trace? This time, he didn't answer me right away. He's assessing my condition again. But there was a tenderness in the cold blue of his eyes. And if Audrey knew him any better, she would see in them a very unusual emotion for him. Anxiety. Anxiety for the sanity of which fragile but brave young woman. No, I didn't. Here's someone who's certainly not afraid to sound like a little unhinged. Are you going to them now? Trying not to add unnecessary mystery, Mikkel made sure to add an elaboration to his answer. Yes. I have to share my findings with my superiors, Audrey, and I won't be here for a while. Why don't they visit us themselves and share some of news with us? There's probably no news. Sighing tiredly, Fel walked over to Audrey and held out a business card with a phone number on it. Call me, anytime. Even if you just want to vent or chat, okay? There was a single decent reason to call, but for some reason, Audrey suddenly wanted to find one. Or I could just call for no reason at all. I mean, what's wrong with that? Thank you. After Phil left, Audrey left too. She took her teacup and said goodbye to Mikhail, who was apparently going to report to management instead of taking a nap. Without undressing, Audrey collapsed onto her bed and stared up at the ceiling. The shadows cast by the trees in the garden drew eerie patterns on it, as if mocking her. They sprawled overhead like serpents. She felt like if she blinked, they would immediately pile on top of her and begin to strangle her. And yet I heard her. I definitely heard her. How can I explain this? Am I losing my mind? Did my mom find a way to contact me? Are my nerves shot? Marcus's soul hasn't left the mansion? What? Alright, are my nerves shot? She has gone through a lot lately. Have I got too much on my plate so my brain is playing tricks on me? What's next? Am I going to have one of those episodes after every case like this? These questions tore her mind apart. Sleep wouldn't come. Even her tea, now cold and untouched, felt like a silent mockery. It's like trying to heal an open fracture with a bandage. An unsettling realization settled inside of her. It was going to get worse. At Astrea, outside it, and everywhere else, monsters from her childhood were bursting forth, battling for supremacy against real adult problems. The anticipation of something bad rose in a lump in her throat, restricting her breathing. Her heart pounded so hard that her vision darkened. The panic attack brought her to her feet, knocking the remaining oxygen out of her lungs. Damn it! She tried to grasp at something she could understand, something that could bring light into her world. She thought about... Well, this is a tough one. We'll go with Mikhail. She wrapped her arms around herself, closed her eyes, and pictured Mikhail's face in front of her. I could use his cool composure right now. If he were here, he wouldn't have let me lose it like that. She focused on her breathing. Inhale, exhale. The panic subsided, the tingling in her limbs passed, and the fog in front of her eyes began to clear. Looks like it helped. She didn't want to go back to bed. It felt like all of her fears lurked underneath the covers. I definitely shouldn't be alone right now, but it's not like I'm going to find anyone in the middle of the night. In an attempt to dispel bad thoughts at least a little, Audrey decided to go out into the garden to get some air. The pale light of the moon breathed life into the trees that cast eerie shadows in her bedroom. The branches rustled, creaked as they whispered among themselves, discussing their sudden guest. They followed her with the black, sunken sockets of their hollows. It's like I'm stuck in a nightmare where the sun never rises and the night lasts forever. Silent and understanding, Astrea watched the garden from her usual spot, ready to keep her company at any hour of the day. Well, hello there. As she approached, Audrey noticed a single rose resting by the pedestal. Did Cassiel bring it here? She could find no explanation for his strange treatment of a mere statue. He sits here for hours, bringing her flowers, as if another grim thought washed all the color out of the already gray area around her. As if it's a grave. The faint rustling of the bushes grew louder, as if someone was trying to approach stealthily. All you had to do was think of him, and there he is again, as if by magic. Cassiel? The rustling sound slowly got closer. Without a voice accompanying it, it could be hiding anyone. It could be an animal. Her mind tentatively suggested that this was a garden, not a vast forest, and though there was no fence in sight, beyond that unseen border was a city, not a black abyss. Cassiel. She repeated his name louder, her voice more demanding. She didn't try to hide her concern. Why can't he just reply? Her voice, her name, spoken in a voice as soft as cotton, clogged her lungs and made it impossible to breathe. It's not Cassiel. I don't know whose voice it is. She pressed herself against the statue and fell silent. What are you doing here, you sly fox? Oh God, who is that? ask them to introduce themselves. Who's there? Her voice trembled treacherously, and her feet felt rooted to the ground. The shadow passed very close, too fast to be a human, and too big for a beast. Audrey jumped in surprise, barely holding back a scream. With his usual bad timing, her mother's advice came to her with a bright, blinding flash. I should have hidden. Trying not to lose sight of where the shadow had rushed by, Audrey retreated deeper into the shrubbery. Under the moon's gaze, she tried to pick up any sounds, but the garden was as silent as she. It's my frayed nerves. The branches pricked at her in an unfriendly manner, trying to coax a guest out of hiding. It was like they didn't want to be dragged into the showdown between a young woman and a shadow. I can't stay here until morning. I have to do something. A familiar guttural growl sounded from behind her. Then a black snout appeared, barely recognizable in the darkness of the night. God, it's the wolf. Her impulse to approach was restrained by memories of the bloody shreds of Otto's torn arm. They kept her from throwing her arms around the beast's neck. Still, a sense of relief washed over her body, relaxing the muscles that had frozen with fear. The wolf tilted his wise, calm eyes to look at her and nudged her hand gently with his cold nose. It's like he's trying to calm me down. Can he walk me to the house? For some reason, Audrey was in no hurry to find out. She was afraid of provoking aggression with an accidental sudden movement. As if realizing that Audrey wouldn't budge, the wolf decided to act on his own. In one bound, he leaped across the path and plunged into the darkness of the tangled branches where Audrey had seen someone else's shadow moments before. I hope it's not some unfortunate passerby who wandered into the garden by mistake. A passerby who knows my name and is watching me from the bushes. Scalding herself for the lack of forethought, Audrey took a cautious step forward. She listened carefully. It sounds quiet. She lifted her foot, but didn't have time to put it back down on the grass before her mouth was clamped shut by a broad palm and pressed against a rock-hard body. Hush, don't be afraid. It's me, Cassia. She didn't even have the energy to be outraged. The sudden rush of relief made her legs give out completely. I'm so glad you're here. His whisper sounded close to her ear. I need you to be quiet. Nod if you understand. Okay, I'll be obedient and do whatever you say. Shake your head. Without knowing why, she slowly shook her head from side to side. No. Without even seeing his face, she could clearly imagine his eyes wide with surprise. God, that's not what I wanted to do. What's wrong with me? She tried to break free to explain herself, but Cassia wouldn't let her. A steadying arm wrapped around her waist, pressing her harder against his chest. Every breath brushed against her ear. Audrey, are you kidding me? A misunderstanding had turned into a strange situation. The last thing Audrey wanted to do was annoy someone who had made her feel like a tiny insect in his arms. How do I explain to him that I'm going to be quiet now? There's someone in our garden, and I need you to be quiet. Why do you do everything to spite me? Struggling indignantly, Audrey tried to mumble his name. Only further convinced of her unwillingness to cooperate, Cassia sighed tirelessly, scorching her skin with his hot breath. Do you want me to drag you back into the house and lock you in the bedroom? Huh? I'm sure he didn't mean anything else by that, but this is where you nod, yes. No, what? But the awkward silence convinced her that they had both interpreted an additional meaning. Audrey relaxed her shoulders and gently patted Cassia's large hand with hers. You won't scream. This time she managed to nod her head appropriately. Freeing herself from his strong arms, she jumped aside. She studied his scowling face, making sure it was her colleague, not some shadow in the bushes. She absentmindedly smoothed the fabric around her waist, feeling the residual warmth beneath her icy fingers. For some reason, she kept her hands where his arm had been. You almost strangled me. Since she was forced to speak into a whisper, trying to sound menacing didn't work. His gaze fell on her hands. As if realizing he may have overdone it, he furrowed his brow in guilt. I'm sorry. Did I hurt you? She bit her lip. She regretted blurting it out in the first place. You definitely didn't hurt me. No. No, I'm fine. It's important to Cassiel that you're okay. Audrey spoke as quietly as possible, but slightly historical note broke through the whisper. I saw a shadow behind the archway. Got it. Your wolf is already there. The wolf that saved me from Otto? That's your wolf. He's come to protect you. That strange thought seemed both obvious and unbelievable. My wolf? Come on. I'll walk you home. It was foolish to resist. Trying to keep up without being too loud, Audrey asked. I really wasn't imagining it, was I? No. In the hallway, he stopped. You're not going upstairs? No, I'm going back to the garden. Noticing the doubt on her face, he added, You're safe in the house. Go to your room. You know this is how people usually die, right? When they split up in the middle of the night, go different places. Are you serious? Of course I am. I'm not letting you go alone. Not understanding how anyone could refuse, Cassiel actually froze in place. Did I bring you here so I could listen to this? If we go back together. You almost fainted in there, and now you're rushing back? Why? Why indeed? She crossed her arms over her chest and looked at Cassiel in total seriousness. I'll call the police if we need help. He moved menacingly towards her, trying to catch her. She dodged him, squealing indignantly. What are you doing? I don't have time for this. I'm going to take you somewhere and lock you up. Her fear was washed away by a wave of indignation. I'm trying to help him. Raphael came out of the living room to the sound of shouting. He stared at Cassiel in surprise. What are you doing? Please take her away. What do you mean? I need to check the garden. Stay with her. Without waiting for an answer, Cassiel hurried back, leaving Audrey alone with the confused Raphael. Don't worry, Audrey. Cassiel is hardly in any danger in our garden. I saw a strange shadow there, and he sensed something too. How come he doesn't understand? What if it's a reporter? Maybe it's the one Mom was talking about. It's clearly not human. I don't know about the mom point, but we'll go with clearly not human. The speed of the shadow moved was not normal. It's scary to imagine what Cassiel might face. Come with me, Audrey. Audrey obediently followed him to the living room, then sank onto the couch. Let me allay your fears. Cassiel is a true warrior. You should not stop him from doing his job. Raphael towered over her, blocking her view of the gloomy garden like a wall. Audrey soaked up his calm voice like a sponge that was filled with a strange peace. Now, her own behavior seemed ridiculous. Her attempt to stop Cassiel seemed overly panicked and unnecessary. If they're so calm, then it can't be as bad as I think it is. It's late. You'd better get some sleep. But I promise to wait for Cassiel. The prospect of dragging herself to her bedroom and looking out the window, thinking of 1,000 ways Cassiel could die, didn't seem appealing to her. Honestly, I don't feel like sleeping at all. And I don't want to be alone with myself either. Then I suggest we distract ourselves with music. That always helps me. Or you can lie down in this room. I'll be right here. Maybe I should really go to sleep. Distract yourself with music for 73 diamonds. Ouch. Aren't we disturbing anyone? It's pretty late. There's no one else home, just us. Mikkel went to see his superiors in the middle of the night. What a workaholic. Where's David? The question just slipped out on its own. David, I have no idea. Is it normal for him to be out so late? A look of genuine surprise blossomed in his eyes. Are you worried about him? A little bit. Don't be. It's David. He's probably celebrating another victory. At this, a mix of unpleasant emotions settled in her chest. Audrey rejected jealousy, considering a feeling unworthy of her attention. Instead, she focused on her anxiety. I hope he really is okay. Come, I'll show you how to play the piano. Audrey suddenly felt like a little girl tricked by her parents into going to music school. Her nervousness began to grow. You're not going to hit my hands, are you? Excuse me? The bewildered expression on his face brought a smile to hers. They usually hit a child's hands when they got something wrong. Really? That doesn't sound very usual. The looming heavy silence made her heart clench. Raphael's gentle face was marked by a pity that she didn't want to see. Why did I say that? It forced a smile and suddenly spoke with an uncharacteristic casualness. I promise I won't raise my voice at you, even if you turn out to be the worst student ever. Audrey continued gratefully, just as deliberately cheerful. I don't think you even know how to yell or get angry. Then you have nothing to fear. She stopped near the piano bench and hesitated. When you say you'll show me, what do you mean? Just sit down, Audrey. Try not to be nervous. Audrey lowered her fingers to the cold keys, silently stroking each smooth, pleasant surface. Is it very difficult? Her newly appointed teacher stood behind her. Audrey couldn't see him, but she could feel him. Starting is always the hardest part. She didn't want to disturb the peace of the instrument. It's like trying to speak in a language I don't know. Suddenly she felt his cool hands. His slender fingers covered hers gently. They guided her to the right keys and pressed lightly. The first sound was quiet, tender, like his voice. Audrey relaxed, allowing him to touch her, to guide her. Can you feel the music flowing, changing? His hair swayed and tickled her cheekbone as he leaned closer. He smelled fresh, light, and some kind of flower. She closed her eyes. She tilted her head back just a little and inhaled deeply. Yes. His arms encircled her on both sides. He didn't touch her, but Audrey felt his embrace so clearly. The sounds mingled with the scents, flaring with the sparks throughout the room, fading and reigniting. It was as if Audrey was igniting with them, filling the space with her emotions, enveloping Raphael in warmth. From measure to measure, we move forward. This is how something beautiful is born. It's pretty. And Audrey was filled with it. A tenderness grew inside of her, along with the desire to melt into those sounds with Raphael, to become one with him, the music, the sense, to stay here forever, in serene peace and beauty. Her hand stopped on the keys, and sounds faded away. Opening her eyes wide, Audrey turned her head and met Raphael's gaze. They both froze for a moment, their breaths merging. He was the first to pull away. You have talent, Audrey. Why are you flattering me? No, honestly, a few more lessons and we'll be playing four-handed. Audrey put as much meaning into the words as possible, and she said, Thank you, Raphael. And now I think you should at least try to get some sleep. She cracked open the window, and the pleasant coolness of the night rushed into the room. Audrey felt like breathing it in while wrapped in a blanket with only her nose sticking out. All reasons to refuse sleep were taken away by the light breeze. Noting her sleepy gaze, he nudged her towards the right decision. By the way, this sofa isn't as uncomfortable as it seems. Alright. You've convinced me. But I'm just gonna go lie down until Cassiel returns. She settled in comfortably and listened to the silence of the house. You can't even hear the noise of the city. It's like a kind of magic. Her thoughts quieted under the weight of the blanket that covered her. After tucking her in, Raphael stepped back to the window. He gazed thoughtfully into the pre-dawn darkness. Raphael? Sleep, Audrey. And think of nothing. What about you? I'll be here, watching over you while you sleep. Audrey turned away from him and caught sight of the sky. Good thing the night is coming to an end. The black canvas was slashed with ragged strips of belated sunlight. Dawn was a welcome sight, unusually red. Audrey woke up in her own bedroom. Her first instinct was to separate the events of the night, or the previous day, into dreams and reality. She was equally concerned about how she ended up here. Did Raphael carry me or Cassiel? The labyrinth of her memory was frustratingly empty. I need to change at last. But first I should take a shower. Green ivy. White. Red rose. Blue forget-me-not. Black tulip. Get everything. I'm going with red rose. It's very pretty. Also like the color scheme. Should I choose something else? Nope. Now for my hair. With hairband. Intricate dark. Red. Sleek dark. It's more brown than dark. Light. Red. But bro, who decides these colors? That's like blonde. Red head, kind of like, it's kind of a redhead. Like, especially compared to the red that her shirt was having. I'm just saying. Get everything. I'm not feeling these hairstyles. I think I'm gonna go back with one of our OG ones. Yeah, I went back to one of our OG ones. Continue. She stretched. She decided to check if Cassiel had returned from his night patrol. Of course, it's unlikely that they would have let me sleep until noon if something had happened, but still, she didn't make it to the hallway. Her phone, left on the nightstand, rang angrily for a moment. It filled the room with suffocating worries of yesterday. It's just a phone, Audrey. Keep your wits about you. But with each step, her heart pounded harder and harder. She looked at the screen and was surprised to see that the number was unidentified. That's new. Pick up the phone. Heart filled with anxiety swelling and pressing against her ribs from the inside. I won't let fear control me. Fighting back a shudder, Audrey answered the call. Yes. A pleasant male voice crept into her head. Hello, Audrey. Hello? This is Professor Sinner. Wow, what a name. The surname spun around in her memory, conjuring up faces of people from the past, but she couldn't find the specific person. Rather than look foolish, Audrey decided to come clean right away. Sorry, but I don't remember you. Velvety laughter flowed from the receiver like a murmuring stream. I'm not surprised. You didn't attend any of my lectures. I taught forensic psychiatry. The image of a handsome young man unsuccessfully pursued by half the universe immediately appeared in her mind. For some reason, I was more intimidated by him than attracted to him. How can I help you, Professor? I hardly need help, Audrey, but I hear you do. The thing is, I've been asked to conduct a psychiatric evaluation of your unfortunate patient. Fighting the urge to hang up, she squeezed out. I don't think I can discuss him with you. You can't. But I want to talk to you about you. About me. The picture in her head wasn't adding up. She felt like someone was lying to her. I'm sorry, but I don't want to talk about myself. I don't want to seem ungrateful, but I really don't understand the purpose of this call. After everything that's happened to me, I'm starting to find a catch in everything. I understand, and that I assure you there's nothing to worry about. My gesture of goodwill is not to you, but to your friend Ruth. The rest is up to you. I don't know how Ruth found him, but he's taking a big risk just by talking to me on the phone. Tears welled up her eyes as she realized that her friend was not only praying tirelessly for her, but also seeking a solution to her problem. Oh, Ruth. In spite of everything that has piled up against you, you still answer calls from unknown numbers. That says a lot about you. What do you want from me? I'm sure you've been harassed by reporters. I'll be waiting for you in my office in an hour. I'll text you the address. And don't worry, Audrey. Just come. That's what she said. It's hard to believe that the problem could solve itself like this. As she looked at the address, Audrey felt like she was also looking deep into herself. She refused to allow herself to celebrate prematurely, or even think that the Professor Sinner could help. I'm full of mixed feelings. People don't just help for free. This is true. Is this my silver lining? Maybe it's some kind of test. People just don't help for free. Not everyone. 98% of the population doesn't help for free. Especially when the matter is so serious. I don't think he would risk his reputation just like that for former students. I need to be on my guard. She didn't have the energy to guess anymore. I'll find out if everything's okay with Cassiel, and then I'll go straight to the professor. Cassiel wasn't in his bedroom. After wandering around the house for a bit, Audrey found him in the kitchen. She couldn't contain her joy. You're safe. What a relief. Just in case, she scanned him with her eyes to make sure he was indeed uninjured and all his limbs were intact. I didn't find anyone in the garden. The short sentence sounded like a reproach, but he quickly corrected himself. I don't know who was there, but they left no trace. I see. Are you going somewhere? Just for a couple hours. I'll be back soon. Do we have a case? Not exactly. Phil will come by in the evening and tell you about it. Try not to be late. And get me the address you're going to. What for? Just in case. Alright, let's assume there's nothing really strange about that, especially after yesterday. Cassiel didn't join her for breakfast. Audrey took a quick bite and then rushed to call a taxi and right the wrongs of the past. As she left the kitchen, she nearly crashed into David as he made his way to the second floor. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. Ah, but I saw you right away. Where are you rushing off to? You're looking so beautiful. To meet an old acquaintance. Is the meeting far away? Not really. Well, let me give you a ride. Weren't you just on your way to your bedroom? I was, but not anymore. Why? The last thing I want to do when I see you is sleep, little witch. I'm very curious. What is it you want, then? I can tell you on the way. The offer was tempting, but she didn't want to burden the tired man. Get some rest, David. I'll see you in the evening. Who am I to resist your charms and go against your wishes? He gently touched her hand and brought it to his lips, and left a light, airy kiss on it. I'll be looking forward to the evening. After calling a taxi, Audrey stood still for a moment. If the professor really helps me, will I go back to Goodlem? And leave Astrea? Since she had only been there for a week, it was strange that she was even asking herself this question. All I want was to get my steady life back. But as she stepped out of the house, Audrey called herself thinking something strange. It's as if the threads from the heart of the house are pulling me back. The reception area was tastefully and expensively furnished. It was not like a typical hospital. It was hard to understand exactly what Professor Sinner did. Audrey found no brochures about his work. Trying not to look foolish or glance around too much, he immediately approached the pretty woman at the reception desk. "Good afternoon. I'm here to see Professor Sinner. My name is..." Yes, I know who you are. Please wait a moment. I'll let him know you have arrived." She sat down in a chair and tried to play out possible dialogues in her head. There weren't many. I have no idea what he wants to talk about, and how it will help me. Looking up, she noticed that the woman was staring at her intently. "If you don't mind my saying so, I'm waiting for the bastard to be locked up as well. And for your license to be reinstated." "Oh, thank you." "Rest assured, Professor Sinner will help you. He can do anything." The woman exuded a kind of fanatical admiration that made Audrey uncomfortable. Unfortunately, the office door swung open, saving her from the tense conversation. "Audrey, please, come in." "You don't look like a villain from Batman at all." "What?" Standing at the door was a man who had not changed at all over the years. The same facial features, not perfectly symmetrical, but attractive in their imperfection. People like him are either disliked or drive people crazy. What? Very few people are just indifferent to him. She wanted to believe that she was one of those who would stood firmly in the middle. But now I think he's quite charming. He doesn't make me feel anything. He's repulsive. He doesn't make me feel anything. My opinion hasn't changed after all. Come in, Audrey. Sit wherever you like. The spacious office did not make the professor's line of work any clearer. It was hard to tell if he conducted consultations or therapy sessions here. I wonder if he still teaches. She chose a chair for some reason. The professor stood in front of her. Doesn't he want to sit down? The proximity made her uncomfortable. Should I ask him to step back, or should I stand up myself? Why is he standing there? Did I take your chair? As if shaking off a trance, the professor shook his head. No, don't get up. I want to ask you a question. Looking up at him was awkward. She felt silly and vulnerable. Of course, I'm all ears. How did you end up at Astrea? The question was unexpected, but after a few seconds, Audrey found an explanation for his query. Is he trying to figure out if I'm mentally unstable? It happened by chance. A newspaper clipping with the job listing was placed on my desk at Goodlam while I was packing my things. His voice seemed to be filled with cool skepticism. And who put it there? I suspect it was a parting joke from one of my colleagues. They probably found it amusing. And you went along with the joke so easily. It was hard to explain her behavior. That day I felt like my life was over. Years of study, practice, hard work went down the drain. I think I was angry at myself, at my colleagues, at the whole world. I called immediately to show them that they couldn't break me with a piece of paper. But you went even further. What is he trying to accomplish? Path of faith. I don't know why people have such a strange opinion of the agency, but I assure you it's not like that. My colleagues are certainly of sound mind. They don't see the supernatural where there isn't any. Yes, they are open-minded, but is there anything wrong with or amusing about that? And most importantly, I feel like I matter there. The poignant sentence made the professor smile. An interesting conclusion. Do your colleagues think the same? Audrey knew how silly this would sound, as she had only worked at Astrea for less than a week, but still, she spoke from the heart. Absolutely. Maybe not all of my new colleagues agree, but the agency director gave me a very warm welcome. And I believe that he will fight for me if necessary, and not throw me out like Goodlam did. As if convinced of something, the professor finally took a step back. He walked thoughtfully to his desk, sat down, and rested his chin on his interlocked fingers. You can call me Malek. Audrey nodded hesitantly and relaxed herself a little. Sitting next to him, I feel like a young student again, taking an exam I'm not prepared for. I know I promised I'd only talk about you, but unfortunately there's less time. than I thought. So our options are limited. One way or another, you need to tell me what happened that day. It would be strange if he didn't bring it up, after all. It's the only way he can help me. Besides, he's the one who's setting himself up by talking to me, not the other way around. Why did you think that was the cause of the attack? Was his illness? Audrey saw no other option. I smashed his head with a paperweight, but he didn't even care about his own blood. He almost killed me, but at some point he suddenly stood up. He cried, threw a tantrum, talked to someone, refusing to follow mysterious orders. And then he threw himself out of the window. So he lapsed into a coma and deprived you of the chance to justify yourself? Maybe you can find an explanation for his behavior, but I can't. And you never suspected that he might be ill. He was admitted after a failed attempt following the death of his wife. I had time to evaluate him for antisocial personality disorder, among other things. All of his tests came back negative. Yes, he was depressed, but he was getting better. He was treated with a course of antidepressants and had no side effects. If you had to ask me at the beginning of the session if he would have attempted again, no, I would have firmly said no. But he attempted it again, and even tried to take you with him. Audrey knew what Malek was getting at. She responded the same way that she had to Goodlum management. Yes, I thought he was getting better, but I was wrong. I don't know what happened to him, but the person who came to that last session was completely different. Malek looked at her without pause, but his gaze was strangely detached. It was as if he wasn't really interested in the conversation. Indeed, everything you describe sounds like an acute psychotic episode. But when you're subpoenaed, it'll be best if you don't talk about it. His insanity plea will save him from prison, but it will bury you. And if anyone raises the issue of an attempted incitement to, you may not leave the courtroom. Am I supposed to lie that he's healthy? Mentally. Physically, hardly anyone could call him healthy right now. Am I really considering this? Man, I'm gonna have to think about this one for a second. Okay, so this is my frame of mind. They're trying to flip the script, say he's not insane, this is who he really is, and they're trying to get you off by saying that. I'm gonna go with controversial because absolutely necessary. It doesn't really help him, does it? I don't deserve to go to jail, neither does he. He belongs in an institution, and I need to rethink my life. I can hardly bring myself to continue seeing patients after what happened. At least don't say you think he can't be held accountable for his actions. Unfortunately, I cannot help you unless you want me to. Besides, what makes you think that it's just an illness and not some sort of normal aggression directed at you? I beg your pardon? For example, let's say I find out this nice guy keeps your photos under his pillow. Would that make you feel better? If you learn that he fantasized about strangling you every day, can you give us a little lie then? Or you felt terribly dirty and couldn't shake the feeling that everything Malek was saying might be true? I think that's the point. What did you ask him about his preferences, or did you decide not to do that kind of nonsense? I had no reason to ask if he had any, fetishes or whatnot. Yes, I know this, thank you, dictionary thing. And during your last session, when he showed his true face, what did he say? I remembered every word her patient had said. He believed I came to his dreams every night, and he gave us both pleasure by hurting me. It seemed that Malek knew everything and more, and that his whole conversation was just a strange whim of him. All this chatter could have been reduced to one question: was she willing to lie for freedom? I'm not rushing you, Audrey. Think carefully. There's still time. But don't think of him as a victim, just because he didn't do enough to get society on your side. Because that side would only be on the edge of your grave. The professor unclasped his fingers and leaned back in his chair, The conversation was obviously over. The decision now rests with me. Thank you for your time. I promise the conversation will remain between us. Of course. I'll call you in a few days. Audrey tried to get up, but heavy thoughts seemed to press her into the chair. I screwed up and now I'm trying to get away with it. It's so vile. Malek looked out the window as if he had immediately forgotten that someone was in his office after saying goodbye. Seems like I can just leave quietly. Walk away. She rose from her chair and Malek stood up with her. He led her to the door and reached for the handle. No, I still need to know the price of a service. Block his way, call him out. Professor. He reluctantly let go of the door handle and turned around. Wait a minute, please. I can't leave your office knowing that someone else is paying for me. Even if you're friends, I don't want Ruth to owe you anything because of me. Think about what you want, and only then will we talk again. Fine, if you insist. With a sigh of relief, Audrey prepared to leave, but Malek made a sudden offer that stopped her in her tracks. I know that you and Ruth were part of the same religious cult as children. To be honest, such an experience interests me. Ruth rarely tells me anything about her past, and all her stories seem to have, how should I put it, important details omitted. I'm willing to help if you share your story. The honest, unedited story. His cold, impassive voice made the blood rush to her ears, drowning out all subsequent words with a pounding pulse. Audrey immediately, or automatically, took the business card he offered her and nodded. Just a friendly conversation. Nothing more. If you really care about Ruth. Thank you. She barely registered the reception area or the receptionist calling something after her after she left. Audrey went home with a heavy mixed feelings on her shoulders. As she stepped into the hallway, Audrey realized from the unusual noise that all of her colleagues had gathered in the living room. Feeling like a student for the second time that day, but now late for class, she quickened her pace. She flung open the door. She burned with shame when she realized that everyone was there, even Phil. Damn, I should probably apologize. Sorry for being late. We were just getting started, Audrey. Come on in. But there were too many interested eyes on her. It feels like it's getting hot inside Astrea's walls. Audrey paused for a moment, deciding where to sit. The men were sitting on the couch, and Phil was standing next to Mikhail as usual. Where should I sit? Listen, after the day I've had. Audrey settled down quietly on the leather couch and felt guiltily silent. How long her colleagues had actually been waiting for her was anyone's guess. Now that we're all here, let's get started. Persistent sense of déjà vu set in. I'm back to that day when Mikhail decided to put me on the agency's main case. As if to confirm her thoughts, Phil voiced the gist of the meeting. As you probably guessed, there's been another murder. The victim is a young woman. She was branded on her chest. Cassiel couldn't resist a sarcastic remark. Did the killer get away, or did he stab himself in the throat? This time we managed to catch him. Surprise and unexpected joy appeared on even Cassiel's perpetually disgruntled face. This changes everything. Despite everyone's impatience, Mikhail continued to speak in his usual slow and calm manner. Who is he? It's unclear at the moment. He didn't have an ID on him and he refused to talk to my guys. Maybe it's for the best. Let him tell everything, only to you. Phil nodded briefly and continued. The victim was unemployed. She wasn't in anything dangerous or excessive. She was just a daughter of a wealthy parents. I'll find out the details, but that's all for now. Was the killer caught this morning? At noon. He'll spend the night at my station. In the morning he'll go to court, then to maximum security prison. It will be much harder to talk to him. We need to hurry. Take whoever you think you need, Phil, and go. Audrey saw the look directed at her. Audrey, I could use you. Trying to hide her surprise, Audrey stood up quickly. I think Cassiel has a better chance of getting someone to talk. Yes, of course. The guy who brought him in said the suspect was acting really weird, like he was possessed, but I don't think he's possessed. God, I can tell you right now he's not possessed. We'll figure it out. Would you like some company? There's no need. We don't want to unsettle the police. It's enough that one civilian will be with Phil. It's unlikely that anyone will ask questions. Still, we don't need unnecessary attention. The women promised not to be long, then said their goodbyes and headed to the police car parked near Astrea. Hey, look at the puppy. Despite the late hour, there was a hustle and bustle of life. In the parking lot was a van used to transport prisoners. Sleepy paramedics smoked next to the ambulance. Apparently they were sent to case the suspect tried to... Officers in full gear talked in the station with a police dog sitting next to them. Getting ready to leave in the morning? Phil approached the duty officer, but a question was drowned out by a monotonous hum. Without asking any questions, the man gave her the room number and stared at the monitor. He didn't even look at the guest's face. Now that's trust in your superiors. He's waiting in the interrogation room. Let's go. There was nothing in the observation room but a few chairs and a table with some kind of equipment. The women were separated from the interrogation room by a large one-way mirror. The detainee was on the other side. He can't see you, but he'll hear you. Phil adjusted some knobs on the equipment and stood next to her colleague. The glass is unbreakable, and he's chained to the table. He can't get free. I'm calm. You're right here. And so's your gun, so I have nothing to fear. Yeah, right. I'm going to go in there and ask him a few questions. You'll watch his reaction. Got it. The sound works both ways, so try to keep it quiet if you can. When I'm done, you can ask your questions. If we need to run tests, it's better to do them face to face. Just try to figure out what his diagnosis could be, if any. It's almost impossible to determine anything this way, but I'll try. Audrey moved a little closer to the mirror and scrutinized the man's face. He gazed melancholily into the distance and didn't look violent. Even if he was faking it, why isn't he faking it now? The stranger's profile seemed painfully familiar. Why does he look familiar? Where have I seen you before? Yeah, try to remember. Straining her memory, Audrey mentally sorted through the places where she might have encountered the man. Someone's patient? Did we go to school together? I don't think so. Where else could I have seen him? As if I meet people anywhere outside of those places. Oh, blinding light. The idea sparked in her mind. Thanks to Astrea, she had recently been introduced to more places to meet people. Phil, I saw him at the club when Emma's sister was killed. Are you sure? Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, he hit on me, tried to buy me a drink and stuff. Joy of being useful was pushed aside by the fear that welled up in her throat. Did he want to drag me into that room? That's great news, Audrey. Because of that idiot Charlotte and her messed up cameras, we have no footage. Witnesses are just what we need right now. Glad I could help. Phil turned a knob and touched a finger to her lips. As if sensing something, the man raised his head and stared at the women. He can't see us. What is he looking at? I won't tell you anything, you bunch of corpses. You don't need to know the truth. Better start digging your own graves. Because the beast is already here, and you won't escape. Forgetting about being cautious, Audrey whispered. Has he mentioned the beast before? I don't know. Stretching his chains to their limits, the man moved his head and sniffed. Audrey. I was such a curious rat, not falling into a trap, but broken her back, yeah. Did you introduce yourself to him at the club? No. Suddenly the sound of metal screeched in their ears. The man yanked his hands, ripping off the ring attached to his handcuffs, and lunged at the glass. What the how? How did he... Val ran to the door. The man slammed his head into the mirror with all of his might, like a fly desperate for freedom. Each word was accompanied by a dull, monotonous thud. He's already here. Here, Audrey, can you feel it? Didn't Mommy tell you to hide? Okay. Do you know she's being boiled alive in a cauldron by devils? I'll have them rip that bitch's tongue out if she can't keep her mouth shut. Shut up, I let my inner evil out for a minute. You gotta like that video now if you enjoyed that. Unable to utter a word, Audrey watched him in a daze as Val pinned the man to the floor. There was a crunch of broken bone, but somehow the laughter didn't stop. It felt like his voice had burrowed into her head, clinging to her like a tick with a death grip. It injected venom. And even when the source of the noise was taken away, the laughter continued to echo in her mind. Listen, I'll give it a 5. That was... Yeah! It's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'm gonna pat myself on the back for that one. 3 to faith, 4 to skepticism, 2 to reputation, and hey, look, diamonds! Alright, so it looks like episode 7 is available, so I will get on that ASAP, but listen, if you enjoyed that haunting display there at the end, where you were like, okay, you gotta drop a like. You gotta let me know in the comment section below, and you gotta drop a like. If you're not already subscribed, you gotta be subscribed. But anyway, other than that, let me know in the comment section below what you think, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.